Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Arkansas Motorsports Magazine's Tuesday night tune-up. Here tonight with our guest host Heath Tate. I'm Bill Gilkey. Tonight we're in Mena, Arkansas. We're with JV and Jeff Brotherton of Brodix Cylinder Heads, which is located here in Mena, Arkansas. And tonight we want to thank our sponsors for tonight's show. To begin with, we want to thank Chambers Bank. With 26 locations throughout Arkansas, also location right here in Mena, Arkansas. We want to thank Shaw Race Cars in Batesville, Arkansas. Also want to thank KR Race Fuels. Kevin Rogers, we want to thank him for coming on board and helping sponsor tonight's show. And last but not least, True Grit Auction Company up in Dardanelle, Arkansas. Arkansas's leading online auctioneer for the state of Arkansas. So if you have an auction coming up or want to look at some of their online auctions, please check out their Facebook and website, True Grit Auctions in Dardanelle. Heath, I'll let you talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of motorsports this past week.
Prescott they opened up, I think this past weekend, didn't they run some?
I think you may have had testing. I think
They
they opened this weekend.
They're open this weekend for their first points.
So,
And Centerville, they had testing two on Saturday, and then they raced Sunday.
and I understand you made a few passes on Saturday.
I did. I made a couple passes on Saturday, and went out there and seen those fine folks down there, and then of course I seen Jeff show up. He went down there and ran a little bit Sunday, I think, and participated. Is that what it was? And well, you made it a few rounds. What'd you say? 4 rounds or so?
Yeah, something like that.
But anyway, yeah, he was down there. But no, they had a good car count. Good car count at Centerville.
Good. Like I said, best of luck to Wayne and Patty at Centerville this season, as well as Jackie Lewis and his crew down at Prescott. I'm not sure of any open track racing going on just yet, but that's just around the corner. Do you want to talk about the award for this year, or?
You know, we're going to do something that hasn't. I don't know that we've ever had anything like it in Arkansas. May have, but we're going to do a Motorsports Award.
Yeah, it's going to be the Arkansas Motorsports Person of the Year.
Person of the Year Award. We're going to do one at the end of the season this year. Just
It can be a racer, it can be a promoter, it can be a manufacturer. Anybody associated with motorsports will qualify. There'll be a committee that's being assembled to pick that person. And like I said, we want to thank Chambers Bank for presenting that award sometime after the 2020 or 2021 racing season.
So,
all right, before we get into do we need to talk about Johnny Werner just a minute, or?
yeah, we went and
Our very own late model and modified correspondent Johnny Verdon is passing along some bad information.
on us. We go to a place to eat and we get 2 plates, and he acts like that
We should
that
be charged
be charged at the door when we walk in the door to eat somewhere. So
especially when it's free and
it's free
on
food. So we wasn't going to just get half a plate and turn around and walk out the door.
So if Johnny has called or texted you that if the guys from Arkansas Motorsports Magazine shows up at your function, there's food involved, that we should be charged, it's a baseless accusation.
Right.
Anyway, just poking a little fun at our good friend Johnny Verdon. But on to the show tonight. We are very honored to be here tonight with JV and Jeff Brotherton of Brodix Cylinder Heads, and here in Mena, Arkansas. And JV was inducted to the Arkansas Drag Racers Hall of Fame in 2020. And like I said, I also want to give a big shout out to Bear Brantley, who does a fine job with that organization. And JV and Jeff, the easiest way to get into this is, like we do so many weeks, is we're just going to let you begin where it all started.
Well, do you want the very start?
The very start. The very start. We want to go back to the days of Fort Smith.
All right. Well, I was about 7 or 8 years old, and my brother drove an ambulance. I was from Fort Smith, and he drove an ambulance for a funeral home up there, and they had the old Flying Saucer Speedway outside of Fort Smith, and he would load me in the back of the ambulance, and I would go out to the dirt track on Sunday afternoons, and that was back when they had the old flatheads and straight GMCs, and but anyway, that's where I kind of got initiated into motorsports. After that, of course, back in those days, there wasn't a drag strip or anything, and we were kind of had a few of us old guys weren't old then around Fort Smith, and we were street outlaws before that was a brand. But we were truly outlaws though, as far as Fort Smith went. But we had street racing all over the place, and anyway, I did that for years, and then of course they opened up the Razorback drag strip, and I raced there when it first opened for several years, and around Tulsa and a few places. And so anyway, I moved to Mena in '65, and I quit drag racing, and I went to work for my father-in-law in a aluminum foundry. He made castings, and after that, about 1971, a little old dirt track opened here in Mena, and I started racing a dirt track, and did that for years. And then the boys, when Jeff and Greg got older, they started drag racing, so I went with them a little bit. But we started the cylinder head business, and actually in the late '60s, and our first head was actually a Chrysler Hemi, 426 Hemi, and Chrysler quit producing these, and their story was they were never going to do them again. So we thought, well, that would make a good product. So we stumbled around and made the 426 Hemi, and about 3 months after we finally were able to produce one, Chrysler came out and started giving them away. So they did amazing things for our market there. So then we did the small block Chevy, and it just started, one or two at a time, and it was a real struggle. But over the years, we just kept plugging along, and finally made a business out of it. And Jeff and Greg and Jennifer finally took over several years ago, and they've taken it to places I never did or could have. So, but that's the basics of it.
Tell us a little bit about the cars back. You were talking about your street racing days in Fort Smith. A little bit about the cars that you had back then, and what y'all did. And I guess you could probably go back and say that's probably the onset of the hot rod industry. What would y'all do back in those days to enhance the power of cars back then?
Well, back then in Fort Smith, it was the flathead Ford was it. There were a few people around that. There's an old engine builder named Art Shirley, and he built a lot of the circle track stuff, and mostly flathead Fords. And that was about everything for several years. And then in 1955, the Chevrolet V8 came along, and that put an end to the flathead Ford. But my first car was an old Model A for $45 with a flathead V8 with mechanical brakes on it. It'd take about a block to get it up to 50 miles an hour and 3 blocks to stop it. But anyway, I survived that, and went on, and everything was in California, and our only source of information was a hot rod magazine. We didn't have an internet, or all we had was an Honest Charlie catalog, which was the only thing back then you could buy speed parts. And and Hot Rod magazine, and before the Chevrolet V8 came along, they would have an engine swap article in Hot Rod Magazine that would tell you how to do it and all that. And so the big thing back then was an Oldsmobile or a Cadillac or a Buick and a Ford. And I stumbled around and finally got a Cadillac and an old Ford and raced that around there on the street quite a bit, and then went on to lighter weight coupes, 40 miles with Chevrolets in them. But basically that's what it was. The hot deal back then was fuel injection pistons for $45 and a Duntov cam for $27. If you had all that in 2 4-barrels, you were in business. And but it started like that, and then, you know, as years went by, it evolved into better parts. But basically back then, it was kind of, you just pretty much did everything yourself. And but it just kind of was an evolution of mainly available parts, and being able to afford the parts was a big thing back then.
And you probably didn't realize at the time that, you know, you guys were doing a lot of research and development as far as trying things and, you know, a lot of things that had never been done before. I mean, it had to be an exciting and fun experience for you guys, because you probably didn't realize at the time, but you were really doing a lot of research and development that paid dividends later on in the hot rod industry.
It absolutely, what probably most people don't realize, a lot of the stuff that Detroit does today, the aftermarket did years ago. And you know, like the evolution of cylinder heads, wet flow, things that actually were pioneered in the aftermarket are things that you have the direct injection engines now, and a lot of that stuff was pioneered through the aftermarket. And yeah, it was once Detroit caught on and they saw what made horsepower, but I think the aftermarket kind of led them to find out that horsepower actually is economical when you do it right.
When organized drag racing comes to the Fort Smith area, can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with that?
Yeah, a Razorback drag strip, we were trying to figure the first year, and I don't remember the first year it was back in probably 60, 61. Jimmy Pate and his father, I think they built the drag strip. And that took it was a wonderful thing, because we had probably about a dozen kids that we'd race wherever we'd go out and race, and the police would get onto that, and then we'd go somewhere else, and we weren't dangerous, but it wasn't the best deal in the world. And when the drag strip came along, it took us all off the street, basically. And the old Razorback drag strip, they, you know, I don't know how many cars, but a lot in the early days, there was probably 30 or 40 cars there every Sunday. It was a good deal.
Did you get drivers from out of town, say from the Tulsa area, where they come?
Yeah, you bet. They had some really good cars from Tulsa. Some of the super stock guys, about 2 or 3 super stock guys, would come down to Mopars, and a few of the 409s would come to Fort Smith. And we had some pretty good racers really around there back then for everything considered. But it was very competitive.
Your drag racing days started there, but you started you started watching a little bit of the dirt track with your brother and stuff. Did you ever drag or dirt track racing there at the dirt track in Fort Smith, or was that later on when you moved to Mena?
That was when I moved to Mena.
You never got started on dirt track?
No, the old Flying Saucer Speedway, I don't know what year it closed, but I was real young and I wasn't even old enough to, I think Flying Saucer, I must have been around 10 or 11 when it closed up. And then, because they had the dirt track at the Razorback, but I wasn't really interested in it. thought I was gonna be a drag racer.
Very racer at that time.
Moved to Mena, and they put this track in, it was so boring down here that was something to go do, you know, and, I told you earlier, a couple of guys that thought I knew what I was doing, they wanted me to be partners, and I said, well, okay, you know, so I called James Welch, and he had circle track cars, and he explained things to me, and I understood stagger backwards. So we spun out. Solid year. I lost my first two partners, and it was a horrible year. And anyway, but that's where it all started, the dirt track thing. It was right out here in a little bitty old short. It wasn't even a quarter-mile racetrack. But like I said earlier, we could race 3 to 4 tracks a week if we had enough stuff left to go all week long, but there was a lot of racing around here.
And some of those tracks, if you go back over them, that you raced at down here beside the one here at Mena, would you care to, what were the names, where were they located?
One was at Kirby, Arkansas, and we just called it Kirby.
Right.
And Idabel, Oklahoma had a little, they had a high school, actually a regular high school track, you know, where they did track meets and ran and everything, and did a little old short thing, and they'd turn that into a dirt track, and it was quite a trip. On Sunday night, it was wild and woolly. I mean, it was absolutely, it was wild. That's all you could say for it. It was dog eat dog, and you know, it was terrible. They had the grandstands up at the track meet, and the flagman stood in. They had a walkway to go on the track, and the flagman would stand behind his walkway, and he'd flag it, he'd duck back in the hole, you know. And they had some people down there who were absolutely wild, and
I'm going to take it that it wasn't too wide either.
No.
They're having track meets.
it was a killer. It was a killer racetrack. We really wanted to race to go down there, but at the end of the night, he had a big old giant cattle trough and full of ice and beer, you know, and everybody, we didn't drink back then, but anyway, everybody, about half of them would get drunk after the feature race, but anyway, that was the roughest place. The fastest place was down at, what was that little old track outside Texas County?
I don't remember what it's called. We call it Texarkana.
Well, yeah.
Was it the one that's at the state line?
Yeah, no, state line was after that. There was, before that, it was, shoot, I'll think of it in a minute, but that was the most competitive. That was,
They were roughest too.
yeah, they were pretty rough. They were fast. They was real slick, and that was Gary Wright and, you know, Grady and all, Grady ran it, and it was a pretty fast racetrack. And Ashdown, Arkansas had a little racetrack. It didn't last very long. And we'd go to Shreveport every now and then, not much, but
You also talked about you had traveled up to Centerville to the dirt
yeah,
track.
Centerville, yeah.
We had
That was,
Wendell Cook.
yeah, we, after everything else failed, we raced at Centerville for several years. It was a real good place to race.
What, and I'm gonna go back to the mechanical side.
Nashville, Arkansas.
Nashville, yes. Back to the mechanical side of you being in the sport, did you always have an interest in cylinder heads?
Yeah, really, that seemed to be in my mind, where the romance was in an engine. You know, people would talk about porting or do this or that, and they would pick up horsepower, and other than boring and stroking back then, the cylinder heads were where it was. And I just sort of, for whatever reason, liked cylinder heads. And Hot Rod Magazine, they had an article on when they came out with a 327 300 horse engine in '62. They had an article in it about this new engine, and it had the part numbers. So I went to Smith Chevrolet and I ordered the first set. They didn't even have the part number in the catalog, anyway, I had the first set of 300 horse heads that came to Fort Smith, but, I just, for whatever reason, that just seemed to be where all the action was.
Did you start messing with them at that point in time back then, or was it later on when you started to actually start taking cylinder heads apart and looking at them, trying to figure out what?
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know about airflow or didn't understand it, especially in Arkansas. I went to work when I got out of high school for Fox Manufacturing in Fort Smith. They did the model airplane engines, and my boss was George Moyer, and he was absolutely the best two-cycle engine man in the world back then for model airplane engines. Because he would take a 45 stock Fox model airplane engine, and it was about 7,000-8,000 RPMs, and he would modify them, and they would go 20,000 RPMs. So that kind of exposed me a little bit to that there was something there. And I worked under him for about a year, and that kind of, it didn't all come at once, but it just kind of an evolution. We got started basically, started with a basic cylinder head, and we just copied the whole heck out of everything.
We didn't have a flow bench for a long,
No,
long
we
time.
didn't
I
have
mean,
a
we
flow
were just
bench
trial
for a
and
long
error.
Was the first idea behind doing the aluminum cylinder head, obviously because of the cast iron, you spent a lot of time with it and had an engine issue and you crack it or something, but was it a reliability deal or was it a weight savings deal that got you interested in doing the cylinder head?
I always thought it was the weight, but Chevrolet or GM came out in 1962 with an aluminum head for the Corvette, and they leaked and the valve seats fell out, and that seemed to cast a pall on the whole aluminum cylinder head market. Of course, I didn't realize this, but and I thought, well, it's the weight, and we struggled. We didn't. The cast iron turbos was all the head porters worked with them, and we didn't make the horsepower that a cast iron turbo did. And because what few people tried them, we didn't make as much power, and we had a real struggle. But the thing that really started us was the reliability of the iron heads. The old cast iron turbo heads, head porters, they really don't know when to stop porting. And
No offense to all you head porters out there.
no.
But I think as customers, I think they realize that.
Yeah.
We're not live or anything.
So the iron head thing got so terrible. I guess the very best story to kind of illustrate it would be Ed Howe is a car builder up in Michigan, and he was one of the leaders in that area, and the first guy to really win a race on asphalt was a guy named Bob Seneca from
Yes.
up in Michigan, and Mike's Motor Machine, and Seneca was running them, and he won some races. And he told Ed Howe, he says, I don't care what you say, if the heads are 35 horsepower down and they're 35 pounds lighter, he says, and Ed was a master, Bob Seneca was a master person at understanding how to make a car handle. And so anyway, to get back to the story, well, I talked to Ed Howe about maybe trying a set of heads, and he said, well, man, we've dynoed them. He says, you're talking 25, 30, we're not going to give up 25 or 30 horsepower. I said, okay. I said, well, that's great. I said, I'm going to keep working on it. He said, oh, yeah, call me back. He said, by the way, he says, I've got a window to my office behind my desk, and it's about chest high. He said, I'm stacking these iron turbos up. When I can see the top of that stack, I'm going to call you. So it was about late in that season, he called me up and he said, this is Ed Howe. And I said, yeah. He said, I can see the top of that stack. He said, send me a set of heads. And, so I did, and this was in late that season. So, that winter, the promoter from New Smyrna Speedway called me, and we had a little ad in Speed Sport, and he said, I'm looking for contingency money for the winter series down here in New Smyrna. I said, well, we don't have very many cars running our head. I said, I don't have any money at all. And he said, well, I don't care if you give anything away, I just want to build my purse up. And he said, put up some product. I said, well, that's pretty safe. I said, how about 1 cylinder head a night? He said, yeah, we got 5 nights. He says, that'll do it. So he did, and Mike Eddy drove his car and won 5 nights, 5 nights out of 6. And Ed Howe called me next week, and he said, you remember, man? I said, yeah. I said, man, I don't know how I'm going to pay you off. And he said, would you make that 3 sets even? I said, yeah. I said, I'm in the dumpers anyway. I said, you'll put me a decal on that car, I'll do it. He said, I'll do it, you know. So, but anyway, that's how I got started on asphalt. But he went and he did some head pouring, and but the reliability was the big thing. Is number one by far. Repairability too. Cylinder heads cost twice as much back then as they do now. And you know, really good set of heads was anywhere from $3,500 to $4,000 back then, and we could repair them for, you know, virtually we saved about 90% of the damaged cylinder heads. So that was what really propelled us on.
And to touch on something here, you know, you talked a little bit about there during that time that, you know, you were called up about giving the cylinder head away, and it sounds like it was a pretty tough time.
Oh, extremely tough.
And when you look at what you've done in the performance aftermarket industry now, and I don't mean this as a bad thing. I want this to come off as a positive thing for people out there that are getting things started and making things happen. Was there ever a time that you ever thought about giving up?
Oh, absolutely. I gave up 2 or 3 times. I did. Yeah, absolutely. Sure did.
But was it the mechanical drive in you that just wouldn't let you give up?
Well,
Or you had nothing else to do.
And I want this to
when
come off
I
as
got out of
positive.
high school, I worked for Fox Manufacturing for a year, and I'd always worked in a grocery store since I was 12 years old. So from there, I worked in a gas station for 5 years, and then I worked for Beckman Dairy for a year. And a milkman is a pretty tough job. And then Paula's dad talked me into coming down here and going to work for him. So I could either go back and be a milkman or work in a gas station, and that was it. So I didn't have a lot of options, but it was tough. It really was.
But the main thing is you stuck with it. You didn't give up.
Yeah. I gave up several times. I gave up, and it just seemed like it. You know, the harder I worked, the luckier I got. You know.
Well, that first set of heads that you very first done, how long did it take you to sit there and figure out what you was going to do, how you was going to do it? I mean, was that one of them deals you just sat there and pulled your hair for I don't know how long trying to figure out exactly what you was going to do on that very first set of heads you ever made?
No, not really. I knew what I wanted to make, but making it was another thing altogether.
That's when John Kellogg came in.
Yeah, you have to have a pattern maker, and it is a kind of a funny story in the family. Paula, my wife's dad, Francis Dix, and that's where Brodix came from, Brotherton and Dix. He was a founderman, and he didn't know what a hot rod was. He thought I was crazy, and so anyway, I lost my train of thought here, but I knew what I wanted to make, but making it was something else. And we had a immigrant Polish pattern maker retired in Bowles, Arkansas down here, and he was 80-something years old, and the funny thing is that every now and then somebody says, you know, a Polish pattern maker from New Jersey moves to Bowles, Arkansas, and a founderman from Chicago moves to Mena, Arkansas, and a hillbilly kid from Fort Smith. And that was a combination, but I knew what I wanted to make, but the pattern maker was the key, and he built the first patterns, and my father-in-law had the foundry expertise, and we'd struggled along, we made some, but we didn't have a machine shop, so I had some fellows up in Ohio did the first ones, but between the two of us, we didn't do a good job. And I'd put everything in a giant, all the tooling in a giant wooden box. This was back before we had power screwdrivers, and a hand screwdriver, this whole box closed. I said, I'll never open this box again. It took me a day just to put screws in it. And I said, I'll never open that box again. And because I'd been through 2 or 3 machinists that said they were experts that couldn't do it. And so I'd given up for about 6 or 8 months, and this old fellow walked in the foundry one day, and he had an old V-neck t-shirt on with chicken feathers out of it, and hadn't shaved in a month, and he was a retired tool and die maker from Detroit, and he had moved to Mena to retire, and somehow ended up with a chicken house. And he wanted to get out of the poultry business.
We can understand that.
Yeah, so he walked in and said he understood we were looking for a machinist, and I said, not now. I said, we were, but I said, we've given up. And he said, what are you machining? I said, I'm trying to machine a cylinder head. He said, I can do it. And I said, bull hockey. So I said, and he says, I'm a tool and die maker. I said, you're telling me you can machine a cylinder head? And he said, yeah. I said, I've had a half a dozen guys tell me that. So I can do it. And so I remember I looked at him and I thought, now I've had all these super guys that couldn't do this, and this guy looks like he doesn't have a chance in the world of doing it. Maybe he can do it. So we made a deal that 2 weeks, if he'd do it, he could machine a cylinder head and have a set of heads on my car in 2 weeks that I'd pay him $200. And he said, I'll do it. So we went up, unscrewed the box, and he looked at the tooling, and 2 weeks, when I had that little old Polk County Speedway, I was running around on my dirt car with set aluminum heads on it. But, and he was one of the things that kind of got it going. That was when my father-in-law was on a business trip in Chicago, and he called me and he says, boy, you know, he said, I met a guy up here that's got a speed shop. He said, what's a speed shop? That's a guy that sells race car parts. He said, yeah. He said, I told him that we had aluminum heads, and the guy called me a liar. He said, nobody's got aluminum heads, much less in Arkansas. And he said, well, yeah, my son-in-law does. So I had that set racing out here on Friday night, you know, and so the guy got on the phone and he said, you tell me you have a set of small block heads that don't leak and the seats don't fall out? I said, yes, sir. He says, I'll buy them. He said, how much you want for them? I said, well, I'll blow this deal out of the way. I said, $600. He said, I'll buy them. I said, I'll buy them. And he says, what we have to do is I got to have them here the first of the week, and he says, I want you to take them and put them on an air freight, and I want you to, they had a name back then called passenger down or something like that, where they would physically take the part. They didn't do it, but they say they would strap it in a seat like you were a passenger. You put it on. I took it to Fort Smith. It was in Chicago, you know, just like a regular passenger. So I remember taking them in Fort Smith and air freighting them up there, and that was the ones that went to Seneca, but I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, that's kind of how it got going right there.
At what point did you finally as you were building these things, and did you kind of take a deep breath and kind of breathe a sigh of relief that maybe that this was gonna work? Kind of what year was that?
Never.
Never.
Last week,
You wouldn't have done that last week either, would
we ain't seen him.
you? Still keeping your fingers crossed.
Yeah. No, we had a huge debt, and we were really very far financially. We were in real trouble. We were actually bankrupt between the old foundry and my father-in-law moved and went to Oklahoma City. And anyway, long story short, we were in real trouble. And when we started, you know, paying off our notes and stuff, and finally got kind of even with the world, I thought, well, you know, this might work. But my big thing then was the heads weren't breaking too bad, and they were lasting good. And I thought, well, you know, we'll have 2 or 3 years, and you know, we won't have any more market. But
Yeah, they last a long time. That's a little bit of a negative, but it's positive in the beginning, but, you know.
But I discovered pretty early that if you could find another 15 or 20 horses, and everybody knew it, you know.
Right.
And but we have competitors. We haven't always had competitors, but we've always had somebody that we had to compete against.
Jeff, you've had a pretty good racing career. I shouldn't describe it as pretty good. It's been quite excellent. Tell us about your start in the motorsports world. Tell us how you where you came from as far as motorsports.
Well, my brother's a couple years younger. Man, he's a lot better drag racer than I am. But where we started out is, I started out actually oval track racing. I mean, I don't know, probably 1983. He got me a car that Ken Essery built. I think it was a Monte Carlo. And we raced it in Crawford County for quite some time. And then kind of started racing dirt late models for a couple of years. And then I went to college and kind of got out of it. And then my brother Greg, he wanted to drag race. So he started, you know, him and Dad, while I was in college, built a 55, but no, we built a Camaro first, and 55 Chevrolet, and he started doing all the drag racing while I was going to college, and I quit college and came back, and we just been drag racing since then. Like we were talking about earlier, we kind of got off on the drag racing because he was so successful in the oval track business that Greg liked the drag racing, and you know, we just said, you know, we need to sell some drag racing stuff, you know, because like he said, everything was iron heads. Just like to start off in the oval track, everything was iron heads, and then the drag racing at that time, they were like, you know, it was unlimited, just like the Wild West right now. We'll just go into that and start selling that, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
Real quick story that you dirt trackers would appreciate was we got the Ken Essery car, and we were racing up at Crawford County Speedway. And so anyway, Jeff, first night we were up there, he hot lapped and did pretty good, you know. In the first heat, he did all right. And second heat, he dropped the flag. I mean, he drove into the front straight stretch wall head on. Well, you know, so we come back and he said, Dad, I don't know what happened. He says, I just went blank. And I said, well, I said, that's all right. I said, you know, that happens, you know. And so we fixed the car up. So next week he did the same thing. And I said, well, why don't I just hot lap? He said, you got it.
I tell you, I couldn't see out of it.
So he said, I can't see now. Nobody ever said that before. So I go up, I hot lap, the car's pretty good, you know, and I'm in the first heat. I think I ran second or something like that. And I kind of told Jeff, I said, son, I don't know what to tell you. And so we started the second heat, it was dark, and I drove into the wall.
well, in y'all's defense, and I really don't know how it is now, but back in those days, coming off turn 4 was a little narrow.
Oh, it was.
There, so,
Anyway, it turned out Ken had put this black mat on. It wasn't screen, but it was just a black mat, steel mat across the windshield. And I told Jeff when he come in, I said, son, I said, when it's dark, you can't see out there. The wall was black. And, so we changed the windscreen on it. He did real good after that. But anyway, that's it.
Did, in your racing career like that, I know you probably didn't get to a dirt track, but as far as drag racing, have y'all two ever got to race against each other?
Drag racing?
Or,
I don't know if we ever did or not, did we? I don't
I
know.
always laid down for him. I really did. I was just there just to go racing. I didn't, I'd lay down for him.
That's a long, that's what, early 90s? When's the last time you drag raced?
Gosh.
Early 90s?
Yeah, probably.
Mid 90s, maybe mid
Yeah,
90s.
yeah.
You kind of left and came back there for hiatus, and then you come back and
Yeah, yeah.
you got a dragster.
You know, we draw each other every now and then, but I just enjoyed going. I didn't care that much about, I cared, but I didn't care that much. You know, they were young and eager and they had a
And very good drag racers.
Yeah, they were good. They were really good. I'm proud of them. I was proud of them.
What is it, Jeff? I mean, you obviously had a little time there in the dirt part, but what really gravitated you to drag racing and bracket racing?
Well, I like cleaning on stuff. I like the drag racing aspect of that. Tearing everything up. Now my kids in go-karts and we knock the bodies off of them every week, but probably that. You know, we started working a lot more at Brodix, and when I quit college, I started working more, and you didn't have as much time, and the fact that, you know, I'm in sales, so there was more openings for me to go to the drag race to try to sell stuff. Between the cleanliness and the probably less work in a bracket car than in like an old track car,
Right.
you know, and then being able to sell more stuff, like I said, it was open to the amount of heads we could really sell. That's probably why I got over the drag racing. You know, it's both people on both sides of it, oval track and drag racing, are really good. I mean, we're all kind of striving for the same goal, so.
And I just want to say, I witnessed a lot of his dirt track career, and he was a very good dirt late model driver. And I really think you could have had a lot of success had you stayed there.
Kept the steering wheel on it.
But you've done exceptionally well. You and your brother bracket drag racing.
Another incentive was that we had to be back on Monday.
Yeah,
morning.
right.
And, you know, as far as having, you know, dirt cars, it got harder, the tracks dried up, and you had to go further, and they had to be back Monday morning to work, you know, that made a big difference.
Right.
Plus, they like drag racing better.
And nothing wrong with that. That was just, you know, something we had talked about, you know, what was it that, you know, the reason that you had gravitated from dirt racing over to the drag racing, but,
Yeah, you know, we used to really go to all the big bracket races, and you don't have much, I don't know, I kind of got off on the drag racing better because you didn't have much time to, just for split seconds and stuff, you know, letting it go on the button and all that. I don't know, it just seemed like I liked it better than the oval track. That's all.
and like I said, you certainly can't argue with the success that you've had. I mean, you've had you and your brother both have had exceptional drag racing careers, and you should be proud, you know.
It's a lot of fun.
I know JB's bound to be proud of you
Absolutely.
too.
Absolutely.
Where, you know, is the aftermarket industry and motorsports have evolved a lot, especially since you've been racing on the streets of Fort Smith. Where do y'all see the next evolution coming in motorsports?
I mean, you know, the LS stuff has been here for a long time, but it doesn't seem like it's been here that long. That's very, I mean, I've even get quite a few more people calling for the LS stuff in bracket racing. Just the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple of guys call and want to do a fast LS engine in a bracket car. I mean, we're headed down that road. I mean, you know, it's kind of all evolving around economics. There's still a lot of people, some people are, you know, not drag racing as much, but they still want to go on the streets. And, you know, the hot rod industry is kind of going in that direction. You know, it's so super competitive. You know, the dirt late models and the bracket racing, it's so super competitive. A lot of people, you know, aren't that competitive as they need to be to win, and it's all about winning, unfortunately. And so they're kind of going back. We saw a lot of, you know, street strip stuff, where they go out there and race on Friday night and bracket, or not bracket race, but, you know, just test and tune and that type of stuff. That's a real big part of our market. And, you know, those are the kind of people just want to go tinker with their cars and go have a good time and go back home and watch football the next day or something like that. A lot of our business is that. You know, we still got the really super hardcore too, but it's kind of becoming more a fun thing than quite as competitive, seems to me like.
We do a thing called spec heads too for different associations, like ASCS Sprint Cars and 305, and we're the only cylinder head because what they've tried to control the cost of engines, so they have one cylinder head, non-ported, so we do quite a bit of that. They try to control the cost of engines with the cylinder head, and that's been fairly successful.
You know, kind of an example of that, what I talked about there, I was stumbling around a little bit trying to get my thoughts together, but, you know, Bill Fry's a pretty good example of that. You know, he was a hardcore old track and a really awesome racer, but now he's fiddling with the, you know, the drag racing side of it and stuff like that, because it's fun and, you know,
And we joke
not as much
about
work, you know, don't tear up as much stuff, but it's still, you kind of get off on the speed and the sound. Yeah.
I mean, that's why I can't think, that's kind of what he said to us, you know, kind of like he said.
And you brought up something, as far as the guys that are still out there hitting it hard, the competition, I mean, it's tough. I mean, even right here in Centerville and Prescott, I mean, the level of, I don't want to say competition, I'm going to use the word expertise. The level of expertise that is in Pro E and Super Pro drag racing, even here in Arkansas, is in a top form.
You gotta be on your game every time you go out there, because everybody out there is good.
They are. You can go buy all the stuff you just couldn't buy back in a while back when Greg and I first got the drag racing. We just made everything and tuned it.
Several years ago, it's been several years ago, one of the top manufacturers was coming through, he was going somewhere, going to Dallas or somewhere, and he visited.
Yeah.
And they said, we're gonna race at Prescott, Arkansas Saturday night, you wanna go? And the guy said, yeah, I'll go. I think Sunday he told him, he said, these guys are serious. I mean, he was one of the better ones.
Yeah.
He said, these guys are serious around here. But that's the beautiful part about bracket racing, though, is a guy in a 4900 can put you on the.
That's right.
Go back to an old story about that, but the one thing about bracket racing is that a lot of people can do it. It's more, you know, it's more whatever, professional or whatever, sophisticated than it used to be, but still, you know, there's guys capable of winning.
And one thing we ask everywhere we go, you know, whether we're doing a drag race show or an oval track show, but what do y'all see that we can do to enhance the sport and get the younger generation more involved? What can we do in bracket racing to try to attract?
Or any kind of racing period, I mean, where do we go?
I'll let you answer that one. I'm old.
That's a great question. I mean, the problem is everything's so technical and bracket racing is so tough. You know, a lot of it comes down to cost. Like we've got several heads now. We've actually, like he was talking about, I was looking at a price sheet over at the Studebaker today. We had like a 1979 price sheet. I was looking at it and I'm like, a set of Dash 8s was like, I don't know, $900. You know, we're selling IKs for $875. You know, bare. So the cost, you know, is a lot of it. It's pretty expensive. It's a lot expensive to do that. And, you know, people just, you know, so much other things to do, the video games and this and that. Of course, everybody's into all-time sports. basketball, football, they're working their kids all year round. But, you know, I guess your parents just have to like it, and you have to fall into that realm, and then you have to find something they like, if it's where the go-kart racing, or the drag strip, or the oval track. It's just kind of got to be bred into you some, and it's just getting tougher, because it's a lot of work, and it's a lot more expensive than what it used to be to get that. And then when you get there, you spend all that money, and then it's, like I said, people are just the hardcores are left now, and it's just, you get your teeth kicked in right off the bat. It's a little discouraging. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it's tougher. It's just overall tougher, and they're making moves, like they got the sportsman class now, you know.
Right.
And of course the juniors, that's hard too, but you know, they got the sportsmen, where just the people that are racing that have never bracket raced before, like IHRA's got it, like Prescott's got it, and I'm not sure Cyril's got it, but especially people that haven't raced before are racing people that haven't raced either. So
And that's
kind
a
of
good
getting
idea.
started. That's kind of getting it started back, and I think that's a great idea. So that's probably what it's going to take.
Because you see a lot of people that they go bracket race 2 or 3 times, and they see how tough it is.
It's tough.
And then their car's for sale, and they're looking for something else to do. And it's not a fault of the sport or the promoter. It's just how it's evolved. The technology and drivers understand what they're supposed to do more these days.
And one thing is like, I guess kind of like what you're doing, touch on a little bit, you know, you said something earlier about the go-kart racing. You're taking your kids and you've got into the go-kart thing. You know, that's a big thing this day and time. I mean,
It's so competitive. It's
I was just
crazy.
saying, it's so competitive, even at that, it's so competitive.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about, was for, in the early, you know, I'd see some of the dirt trackers say, oh, that's, you know, that's easy. You know, man, it's an awakening when you get somebody beat you by 1 10 millionths of an inch, you know, whatever, you know. And there's so many ways to screw up, it's unreal. It's tough.
And talking about the go-kart deal, how long have y'all been doing that now?
Well, we started when he was like 9. We did it for a couple of years, and we took a hiatus for about 1.5 years. And we started back. He's 14 now, so we've been going quite a bit now.
On the go-karts, and that's a good thing. I like, you know, so he's into more of the dirt track, go-kart type thing, other than the junior dragster and the drag racing. And
Yeah, we go-kart for a while, then we got him a junior, hoping he would do that, because it would blend into what I'm doing. But he just said he didn't like it as well right off the bat, you know.
Right.
He liked beating on people and all that stuff, fighting and everything.
So are you washing the cart, or is
No,
he?
he's doing it tonight. 2 or 3 of them he's washing tonight. Servicing the carburetors, changing the oil, he's doing all that tonight. He's supposed to be.
He's my grandson, but buddy, he's got the eye of the eagle. I told him. He just absolutely does not know how to run second. I was a real quick bull story, but we were at the little old track at Sallisaw a couple of years ago, and the old track was muddy and all this, and I'm walking up the edge, and this old fellow about my age was standing there, and they came around, and I said, you got somebody racing? He said, yeah, that's my grandson right there on the pole. I said, well, that's mine right behind you. And man, they started, the racing, this was real muddy and bad track, and
I've been there.
Anyway, I said, I don't know what's gonna happen. I said, my grandson does not know how to run second, but I said, he's not gonna get around him. So Rhett, he slid him coming out of 3 and 4 and slid up in front of him. These 2 guys changed places for about 4 laps, you know, but like I told that guy, I said, you know, he doesn't know how to run second. But the other kid beat him that time, but he's got the eye of the eagle. He's tough.
You know, and we've talked about it several times on the show that, you know, people don't need to overlook kart racing, because it can teach you so much, you know, especially.
It's great. I mean,
You know, the maintenance program it'll get a kid to realize whether he wants to put the work in, you know, or not. And the kids that we've seen come up in the go-karts and stock cars and IMCA modifieds, you can definitely tell the difference between those kids with a karting background versus, not having one, so.
Most of your professional drivers have started out in karts.
But we encourage people all the time, not, young or old, not to overlook karting, as a stepping stone to, a full-fledged race car. Because a kart it's a race vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So have you got to that point now where he's saying,
Yeah.
man, I'm thinking about, I want a modified, or I want.
He wants a quarter midget, but
Okay.
I don't think that's gonna happen. We'll see what happens. I don't think I got that much work in me.
I don't know if Mama's got that much.
At that point in time, Jeff's drag racing slows down a bunch.
My drag race is looking a bunch of my girls, because they played, college softball at the University of Arkansas, and we put a lot of stuff on hold for them for a while. Now it's his turn in the bucket, in the barrel, so.
Of course, the thing with a quarter midget, then Jeff gets to start worrying about shocks and.
Yeah, I know.
It goes on his head a couple of times. You gotta worry about Mama and grandmother too.
Then you talk about the draggers, the dirt late models, the modifieds, all that stuff's so technical. I don't know anything about it. I've raced all my life pretty much, and I'm not gonna go buy a modified, to all the shocks, and so just kind of tourist new people coming into the sport, it's a tough gig. It's a really tough gig.
And like we said, it's all of motorsports has become so technical. The technology's really taken over. And I know we'll use you for an example, you probably had no idea back when you were racing the back streets of Fort Smith that the motorsports industry would be as technical as what it is now.
No, I had no clue. It's, everything is technology, and just, everything gets more sophisticated. Politics and medicine, and it's just the way of in America. We own everything, for better or worse sometimes.
But I think one of the greatest accomplishments is, obviously y'all have been very successful racing, but from a manufacturing standpoint, you've got to be proud of when you look back at those days when you said earlier, there were a lot of days that you thought about giving up. You look at what you built, and I don't know how many people y'all employ, but obviously it's a few, and it's got to be good for the local economy here in Mena, and it's a great thing for the state of Arkansas to have a company that y'all basically built from nothing to what it is today. It's not just Arkansas, it's kind of a worldwide deal. And that is something that I think you have to really be proud of all the hard work that you've put into it to see where y'all are at today. And I just have to think that your company is a great ambassador for the state of Arkansas.
Well, think about manufacturing, either us or whoever, most manufacturing, we take something from nothing, and we're not churning money. In other words, we buy products, and we buy aluminum, we buy steel, we buy blah, 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 all over the place, put it in something, and we sell it, and we're actually producing a product. And a lot of stuff today is we're just churning money, and we've had the Chinese slap us upside the head a couple of times, and but manufacturing is good, but we don't, as a rule, we haven't appreciated it as much as we should.
But like I said, you bring up an interesting point about the import industry and how it affects, America. I think one of the things I think have to be the most proud of is that, obviously that there may be some cheaper stuff out there, but you build such a quality product that I think when people go to buy cylinder heads, they they want a Brodix
So
cylinder
years
head because
so, yeah.
the quality that's behind it. And like I said, it goes back to all y'all's hard work that y'all put into this company, and you should be commended for it.
The kids are doing it all now, but you're right, an engine builder, especially engine builder, if they build a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $100,000 engine, and a little bit of extra money, if the thing drops valve speed or starts leaking, it's false economy, and that's what we tried to concentrate on is keep the quality good and try to keep the technology up and try to do a niche market.
We've had I mean, our employees we've had a lot of great employees over the years. Some of them passed away, some of them retired, but you've had a lot of great employees that have really carried a huge load, and, because I mean, it's not like you and I are silverhead experts as far as the flow and we've had CNC guys, we've had, just guys that have helped us out a lot, carry us to that next, but you've always been able to manage them and keep them together and work together as a team. That's a lot of business, So there's been a lot of smart people that can really do their product inside out, just couldn't manage the people.
The beauty of America in any place is that there's so many people with talent that don't even know they have it. We have guys coming. We lost him a few years ago, but one of our most talented employees over the years is barely a high school education, but he just got an opportunity to use his natural talent. A lot of people have natural talent, and they just gotta have a place to go with it, though, So, we've had a lot of luck, too.
Well, you've certainly been able to cultivate all the right ingredients, and I'm going to say the automotive aftermarket industry is one of the toughest. It's bound to be one of the toughest industries to be in, and like I said, by your hard work and determination, and then you and your sons and daughters cultivating all the right ingredients, and as far as employees and stuff, and you've assembled a team that brought you to where you are today. As I said earlier, your company is a great ambassador for the state of Arkansas, and you certainly should be commended, your contribution not only to aftermarket, the aftermarket industry, but also as a manufacturer here in Arkansas.
We appreciate that. It's Jeff and Greg and Jennifer have done it. The drag racing end of it, they've probably been, without question, they've been the ones that made that work.
And it sounds like that Jeff is probably going to dip off into the oval track industry in a few years. So we're excited to see what new
Hopefully dip off
level
selling heads, not racing cars.
that takes y'all. Go ahead, Heath, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, before we got stopped, I guess what Jeff always said, or what you always say, I was gonna ask Jeff, where do you look at you headed for 2021 as far as racing and
Correct.
what you're looking at doing this year?
Well, I want to race some more. I still enjoy it. I like it. I like messing with the cars. Friends that do it, stuff like that. But we're going to do some karting, and we're going to do some drag racing, and maybe a little bit of baseball. He quit baseball this year. Just kind of want to get back in a little bit with some of his friends. But I'd like to drag race more. We'll just see what it takes. And of course, I really like the karting too. I like the karting because it teaches him to work on stuff, teaches him to deal with people, teaches him to deal with adversity, and I just enjoy it. But that's probably what we're going to do this year.
JD,
I'm just going, I'm over 80 years old. So I'm just glad to be here. So I'm just proud of what they've done, and I don't do anything anymore. Just kind of, I used to tell everybody I'd clean the cash register out at 5 o'clock, but I don't do that anymore. So
Just on Friday.
yeah, but they're doing a good job, and I'm just kind of cruising. I got my old cars to fool with, and
and a great collection there that
this is,
and
this is beautiful. it's an honor just to come inside and get to look around, so. I'll tell you, our production manager, Aaron Gilkey back there is trying to close us out, although we could sit here and talk all night. It's been an honor that y'all gave us a couple of hours of your time this evening. I know how valuable your time has got to be, and it's just been great having you both of you on the show tonight.
Thank you, we appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thank you for doing what you're doing too. There's a lot of history in Arkansas that I thought people didn't care about, but there's a few people starting it.
We appreciate that.
Well, our story behind this is we believe that every racer out there has a story, and we're trying to tell it one story at a time. So hopefully, somewhere down the road, we'll get to come back and speak with you gentlemen again.
Be glad to have you.
But anyway, Heath, where are we going next week?
We're actually gonna be back in Mena, Arkansas next
What,
week.
have you bought a house down here or something?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
But we're gonna be back in Mena next week. We're gonna be, with, John Shoptaw, talking a little dirt track racing, and Bruce Bush, talking a little dirt track racing.
All right, so.
There's another company here called Hotwire Automotive, and they are very sophisticated into wiring harnesses for engine swaps. It's something you might, if you have time, you might want to talk with them sometime.
Okay.
I know that's kind of getting away from, but it is automotive, hardcore automotive, but they've done a lot of great things in that area.
We'll check them out. So, all right, we'll make the trip back to, make a beautiful drive back to Mena next week. Like I said, we want to thank tonight's guests, JV and Jeff Brotherton, and thank our sponsors, Chambers Bank, with 26 locations in Arkansas, one right here in Mena, Arkansas. Our good friends up at Shaw Race Cars in Batesville. Also want to thank KR Race Fuels for coming on board last week as a new sponsor, and True Grit Auctions, Arkansas's leading online auction company. Also want to throw a shout out to Four Place Speed Shop up in Plummerville, Arkansas, and also Straight Line Transmissions in Greenbrier, and Jim Freeman's company. Got me out there, Heath.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure here, guys.
A lot of pressure
Yeah.
here. Well, Weston Petroleum.
Petroleum is what it is, but it's kind of, I'm not really want to say a whole lot about Jimbo right now. I mean, he's thinking about getting back into racing
Yeah.
again, and as of Saturday night, we were kind of,
That was a tense moment there when he made the decision to go back there. But anyway, just kidding with you there, Jimbo. We appreciate Western Petroleum for all they do for Arkansas Motorsports magazine. So ladies and gentlemen, for Heath Tate, Jeff Brotherton, JB Brotherton, I'm Bill Gilkey, and we'll see you back next Tuesday night from right here in Mena, Arkansas.
yes.